Imagine being told you're worthless your entire life, that you'll never amount to anything, that your dreams are too big for someone like you. Now imagine becoming America's first female self-made millionaire anyway. This is the story of a woman who was born in a slave cabin, orphaned by 7, and told she didn't belong in the room where millionaires were made. Her name was Sarah Breedlove, but the world would come to know her as Madam C.J. Walker. And honestly, her story will make you question everything you think you know about success. Because here's the thing, she didn't have a college degree. She didn't have investors. She didn't even have a business plan. What she had was something most people overlook. But we'll get to that in a second. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1867. The Civil War just ended. Slavery is abolished, but let's be real. Freedom on paper doesn't mean freedom in practice. Sarah Breedlove is born on a cotton plantation in Louisiana, the same plantation where her parents were enslaved. Think about that. Your first breath of freedom is on the same soil where your ancestors were property. Her parents? Sharecroppers, which, if you don't know, is basically slavery with extra steps. You work the land, but you'll never own it. You make money, but you'll never keep it. It's a trap designed to keep you exactly where you are. And Sarah? She's born right into that trap. By the time she's 7 years old, both her parents are dead. Yellow fever took them. Now she's an orphan, living with her sister, picking cotton in the Mississippi Delta. 7 years old. Think about what you were doing at 7. Playing with toys? Going to school? Sarah was surviving. But here's where it gets interesting. Because most stories about poverty and hardship follow a predictable path. Born poor, stayed poor, the end. That's the story society expects. Sarah didn't get that memo. So let's fast forward a bit. Sarah is now 14. 14. And she gets married to a man named Moses McWilliams. Now you might be thinking, 14, that's a child. And you're right. But here's the context. For a young black girl in the 1880s South, marriage was often the only escape from abuse, poverty, or worse. Sarah married Moses not because of some fairy tale romance. She married him to get away from her sister's abusive husband. Let that sink in. At 14, she's making survival decisions that most of us can't even imagine. They have a daughter, little Alelia. And for a brief moment, maybe, just maybe, things are looking up. Then Moses dies. Sarah is 20, a widow, a single mother. And here's the kicker. She's barely literate. She can't read well. She can't write well. The odds are stacked so high against her that most people would have just given up. But not Sarah. She moves to St. Louis, works as a washerwoman. You know what a washerwoman did back then? She scrubbed other people's dirty clothes, by hand, for pennies, in scalding hot water that would crack and bleed her skin. She's making $1.50 a day. $1.50. To put that in perspective, that's like making $20 a day in today's money. Try living on that. Try raising a kid on that. But Sarah isn't just washing clothes. She's watching. She's learning. She's paying attention to the women around her, the ones who seem to have a little more money, a little more respect. And she notices something. Their hair. Now, this might seem random, but stay with me. Because this observation, This tiny little detail, it's about to change everything. Here's what Sarah noticed. Black women in the early 1900s were dealing with a massive, almost invisible crisis. Hair loss, scalp disease, damage. And it wasn't just vanity. This was serious. See, back then, black women were working in conditions that destroyed their hair. They were domestic workers, washerwomen, laborers. They were using harsh soaps, sleeping in poorly ventilated rooms, dealing with stress, malnutrition, and a complete lack of hair care products designed for their hair type. Because let's be honest, the beauty industry, it wasn't made for black women. It ignored them, dismissed them, told them they didn't matter. And Sarah? She was one of them. She was losing her hair, badly. She tried everything, all the so-called remedies of the time. Nothing worked. Can you imagine? You're already struggling, you're already poor, and now you're losing your hair. Something so tied to your identity, your femininity, your sense of self. It's devastating. But here's where Sarah is different. Instead of just accepting it, she gets obsessed. She starts experimenting, mixing things, testing formulas. She's not a chemist. She's not a scientist. She's a washerwoman with a problem and a whole lot of determination. And one night, she has a dream. Now, I know how this sounds. A dream told her what to do. But Sarah swore by this story her entire life. She said an old black man appeared to her in a dream and told her what ingredients to mix. Real? Metaphor? Divine intervention? Who knows? But what matters is this. She woke up, mixed the formula, and it worked. Her hair started growing back. And that's when she realized something huge. If this worked for her, it would work for other women too. Women who were desperate. Women who were ignored by the beauty industry. Women who had money to spend, but nowhere to spend it. Sarah Breedlove just found her business. But here's the twist. She didn't have money to start a business. She didn't have connections. She didn't have a safety net. What she had was guts. So Sarah does something wild. She moves to Denver, Colorado, in 1905. Why Denver? Because her brother lived there, and it was a fresh start. A place where nobody knew her, where she could reinvent herself. And reinvent herself she did. First, she gets married again, to a guy named Charles Joseph Walker, a newspaper salesman who understood marketing. And this is important, because Sarah was brilliant with the product, but C.J. Walker, he understood how to sell. Together, they create a brand, not just a product, a brand. She stops being Sarah Breedlove and becomes Madam C.J. Walker. That name? It was intentional. Madam sounded elegant, sophisticated, European. It gave her authority. It made people take her seriously. And here's where it gets genius. She didn't just sell hair products. She sold transformation. She sold dignity. She sold the promise that you, yes you, could look beautiful and feel confident no matter what the world told you. Her pitch was simple. I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the cook kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations. She wasn't hiding her past. She was weaponizing it. She was saying, if I can do this, so can you. And black women across America, they felt that. But selling the dream is one thing. Delivering on it, that's another. Madam Walker didn't just create a product, she created a system. And this is where she goes from entrepreneur to genius. See, most businesses at the time were top-down. You made a product, you sold it in stores, the end. But Madam Walker? She created a direct sales model, door to door, woman to woman. She trained Black women to become Walker agents. They would learn her hair care method, buy her products wholesale, and sell them in their communities. They'd give demonstrations, teach other women, build relationships. And here's the kicker. These women made good money. Some made more in a week as a Walker agent than they'd make in a month doing domestic work. Think about what that meant. For the first time, thousands of Black women had economic independence. They weren't just employees, they were entrepreneurs. They had control over their income, their schedules, their lives. Madam Walker didn't just build a business, she built an army of empowered women. By 1910, she had thousands of agents across the country. By 1917, she had over 20,000. But it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the culture. Walker agents wore uniforms, white blouses, black skirts. They looked professional, put together, respectable. In a world that constantly told Black women they were less than, Madam Walker said, "You are professionals. You are businesswomen. You matter." And people noticed. She started traveling the country, giving lectures, training agents, building her empire. And she did it all while facing racism, sexism, and every obstacle you can imagine. But here's what I love about her story. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for society to change. She created her own lane and dominated it. Now, you'd think that as Madam Walker got more successful, people would celebrate her, right? Wrong. The more money she made, the more criticism she faced. And it came from everywhere. Other Black leaders? Some of them accused her of promoting vanity, of making Black women want to look white with straighter hair, of selling out. White society? They dismissed her as a novelty, a fluke. They couldn't fathom that a Black woman, a former washerwoman, could outsmart and out-earn most men. Even her own husband, C.J. Walker, became a problem. See, as the business grew, so did the tension in their marriage. He wanted to be in charge. She knew she was the visionary. They clashed, and eventually, they divorced. But here's what's important. She kept his name, Madam C.J. Walker, because by then, it wasn't just a name. It was a brand, and she owned it. Let me tell you a story that perfectly captures who she was. In 1912, she tried to speak at the National Negro Business League convention. This was a big deal. A gathering of the most successful Black entrepreneurs in the country. The founder, Booker T. Washington, one of the most powerful Black men in America, refused to let her speak. He didn't think a hair care entrepreneur, especially a woman, belonged on the same stage as serious businessmen. So you know what she did? She stood up in the audience, uninvited, and said, "Surely you are not going to shut the door in my face. I feel that I am in a business that is a credit to the womanhood of our race." She demanded to be heard. And guess what? She was. That moment? That's peak Madam Walker. She didn't wait for a seat at the table. She pulled up her own chair. By 1916, Madam C.J. Walker was one of the wealthiest women in America.
Not just black women, women, period. She was making over $500,000 a year in 1916. That's the equivalent of tens of millions today. She built a mansion in Harlem, a sprawling estate called Villa Lewaro. It had a ballroom, a library, an organ, gold-plated fixtures. It was extravagant, unapologetic. A middle finger to everyone who said she'd never amount to anything. But here's what makes her different from most rich people. She didn't hoard her wealth. She used it as a weapon for change. She donated thousands to black schools, orphanages, and the NAACP. She funded anti-lynching campaigns. She supported the arts. She hired black architects, black builders, black staff. She understood something that most people miss. Wealth isn't just about what you have, it's about what you do with it. And she did a lot. But even at the peak of her success, she faced constant scrutiny. People questioned her methods, her wealth, her motives. Some accused her of exploiting black women. Others said she was too flashy, too bold, too much. But Madam Walker didn't shrink. She expanded. She traveled to Central America and the Caribbean, expanding her business internationally. She became a global brand before globalization was even a thing. And through it all, she kept training women, empowering them, giving them opportunities they never thought possible. Madam C.J. Walker died on May 25, 1919. She was only 51 years old. Kidney failure and hypertension took her. She worked herself to death, quite literally. But she died knowing she'd done something extraordinary. She went from picking cotton to building a multi-million-dollar empire, from being illiterate to advising presidents, from being ignored to being impossible to ignore. But here's what I think her real legacy is. It's not just the money, it's not just the products, it's the audacity. The audacity to believe she deserved more. The audacity to bet on herself when nobody else would. The audacity to build something from nothing in a world designed to keep her in her place. She proved that your starting point doesn't determine your ending point. That being underestimated is actually an advantage if you know how to use it. That you don't need permission to be great.
And here's the thing that gets me. She did all of this without the internet, without social media, without venture capital or business loans or mentors or any of the things we think we need to succeed. She had a problem, a solution, and relentless drive. That's it. Today, her brand still exists. It's been revived and reimagined. Her mansion is a historical landmark. Her story has been told in books, documentaries, and even a Netflix series. But beyond all that, her impact is in the thousands of women she employed, the families she fed, the opportunities she created, the doors she kicked open. So here's what I want you to take from this. Madam C.J. Walker's story isn't just a history lesson. It's a blueprint. You don't need to be born rich. You don't need to be connected. You don't need to have it all figured out. You need to see a problem, find a solution, and refuse to quit when the world tells you no. Because they will tell you no. They'll ignore you. They'll doubt you. They'll try to keep you in your place. But here's the secret Madam Walker knew. Your place isn't where you start. It's where you decide to go. So ask yourself, what are you waiting for? What's the dream you've been putting off because it seems too big, too impossible, too far out of reach?
Because if a woman born in a slave cabin can become a millionaire and change history, what's your excuse? I'll wait. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell me what your big dream is. And keep watching, because we've got more stories like this coming your way. Stories of people who refused to stay small. See you in the next one.